Your soulmate opened up to their mother about you, and shockingly, she shouted, "You are my beloved child, stay with me for just a moment," because what unfolded behind closed doors was never meant to remain hidden forever. Somewhere, while you were living an ordinary day, a conversation quietly began that could become one of the most meaningful turning points in your story. It did not happen in a crowded room or in front of strangers. It happened where truth usually feels safest. Between a child and their mother. At first, there was silence, the kind of silence that carries questions too deep for ordinary words. Then your soulmate finally gathered enough courage to speak about you. Not casually. Not as a passing thought. They spoke your name with a sincerity they had been protecting for far too long. And the moment those words reached their mother's ears, the atmosphere changed in an instant. You may wonder why. Stay with this message, because every piece connects to what comes next. Imagine carrying something in your heart for weeks, maybe even months, wondering if anyone would truly understand it. Your soulmate had reached that exact point. They were tired of pretending that their thoughts kept drifting back to someone they couldn't explain. Every memory seemed connected to you. Every unexpected smile had your presence hidden inside it. Eventually, they realized silence was becoming heavier than honesty. So they chose to open the door to a conversation they had avoided for so long. They looked at their mother with uncertainty, took a deep breath, and began describing the person who had quietly transformed the way they looked at life. That person was you. At first, their mother listened without interruption. She noticed something different in her child's voice. This wasn't excitement that fades overnight. It wasn't temporary admiration. It sounded deeper, calmer, almost as though a future was already speaking through the present. She paid attention to every detail, how your soulmate described your kindness, your resilience, the peace they somehow felt whenever your name entered the conversation. The more she listened, the more serious her expression became. That unexpected silence wasn't empty. It was filled with thoughts your soulmate couldn't yet read. Then something happened that nobody expected. Their mother suddenly stood up. Her eyes widened, not with anger, but with overwhelming disbelief. She looked directly at her child and, in a voice stronger than anyone had ever heard before, she exclaimed, "You are." The sentence stopped there. For one breathtaking moment, the room froze. Your soulmate searched her face, trying to understand what those unfinished words truly meant. Why had she reacted so powerfully? Why had one conversation created such an emotional shift? Questions filled the air, but answers refused to arrive immediately. Sometimes the most important truths pause before revealing themselves. Sometimes destiny introduces itself through suspense rather than certainty. What if the unfinished sentence wasn't meant to create fear, but clarity? Think about that for a second. Life has a remarkable way of placing unfinished moments in front of us because unfinished moments demand our attention. They make us reflect. They invite us to see beyond appearances. And this conversation was becoming exactly that kind of moment. Your soulmate realized their mother wasn't reacting to a simple crush or an ordinary relationship. She seemed to recognize something much deeper, something she hadn't expected to hear. As the silence continued, memories began flowing through her mind. She remembered conversations from years earlier. She remembered qualities she had always hoped her child would value one day. Compassion, loyalty, patience, quiet strength. Without realizing it, your soulmate had just described someone who reflected every one of those hopes. That realization caught her completely off guard. But there was still one sentence left unfinished. And unfinished words often carry the greatest weight. Your soulmate waited, heart racing, unsure whether the next words would change everything they believed about this connection. Every passing second felt longer than the last. Yet strangely, beneath the uncertainty, there was peace. The kind of peace that appears when truth is close enough to be felt, even before it is spoken. Maybe you've experienced moments like that in your own life. Moments when answers seem just beyond the horizon. Moments when everything appears ordinary on the outside, while something extraordinary is quietly taking shape beneath the surface. This was one of those moments. The conversation had only begun, but invisible pieces were already moving into place. Neither your soulmate nor their mother realized that this single discussion would continue unfolding in ways neither of them could predict. Sometimes the smallest conversation becomes the doorway to the biggest transformation. Sometimes a single unfinished sentence becomes the reason an entire future begins to rearrange itself. So don't rush past this part of the story. There is a reason that unfinished phrase still echoes in the room. You are. What came next would reveal why those words weren't spoken in disappointment, but in astonishing realization. And once that realization finally surfaced, nothing about this conversation would ever feel ordinary again. A quiet feeling settled over the room, the kind that arrives just before a hidden truth finally steps into the light. Your soulmate searched their mother's face, waiting for the words that had been suspended in the air. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. Then, with a slow breath, she completed the sentence. You are. Already speaking as if this person has become part of your future. Those words landed with unexpected force. Your soulmate hadn't realized how obvious their feelings had become until someone else reflected them back. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was certainty growing quietly beneath the surface. They tried to explain that meeting you had changed the way they viewed tomorrow. Suddenly, dreams felt more meaningful. Small victories felt worth celebrating. Even difficult days seemed easier to carry because somewhere in their thoughts, your presence brought an unusual sense of calm. Their mother listened carefully, then smiled in a way that carried years of wisdom. She wasn't judging appearances or chasing perfect stories. She was paying attention to something deeper, the peace that entered her child's voice whenever your name appeared. Some connections don't need dramatic explanations. They reveal themselves through quiet transformation. She leaned forward and asked one unexpected question. What kind of person do you become when you think about them? That question changed everything. Instead of describing you, your soulmate began describing themselves. They admitted they had become more patient, more hopeful, more willing to believe that meaningful things still happen unexpectedly. They confessed they had started working harder on their own goals because they wanted to become someone worthy of the future they imagined. Without realizing it, they had stopped talking about love and started talking about growth. Their mother nodded gently. Then perhaps, she whispered, this connection is helping you discover the best version of yourself. Those words lingered in the room long after they were spoken. Take a moment to think about that. Sometimes the greatest sign of an important connection isn't constant excitement. It's quiet transformation. It's becoming kinder without noticing. It's choosing hope when giving up would have been easier. Those changes often appear long before any destination is reached. Your soulmate felt something shift inside. The uncertainty that had followed them for so long began giving way to quiet confidence. For the first time, they understood that real connections aren't measured by how loudly they begin, but by how deeply they inspire positive change. And just when they thought the conversation had reached its most meaningful point, their mother revealed something even more surprising. "I've been waiting," she said softly, "for the day you would speak about someone exactly like this." Your soulmate froze. How could she have expected this? What had she noticed long before anyone else? The answers were still unfolding, and each one carried more weight than the last. The story wasn't racing toward an ending, it was carefully revealing pieces that had been hidden all along. If this message resonates with you, you're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments about what part stood out the most. And if you enjoy stories that explore meaningful connections and personal growth, subscribing simply helps you join the journey as new chapters unfold. But don't leave yet. The next part uncovers why those final words from the mother carried a meaning your soulmate never imagined, and why that single conversation continued changing both of their perspectives long after it ended. Sometimes the quietest moments create the strongest echoes, and this story is only beginning to reveal why. A new realization quietly unfolded, not through noise, but through a memory that had been waiting for the perfect moment to return. Your soulmate noticed their mother staring toward the window, as though she wasn't looking outside at all. She was looking back to a conversation she once had with her own heart. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "There was a reason I reacted the way I did." Your soulmate leaned closer. Years ago, she explained, she had often wondered what kind of person would truly bring out the best in her child. Not someone impressive on the surface. Not someone who simply looked perfect. She had hoped for someone whose presence would inspire peace instead of pressure, someone who would encourage growth instead of competition, someone whose character would quietly strengthen everyone around them. Then she smiled. "And today," she said, "when you described this person, I stopped hearing a story. I started recognizing an answer." The room became silent once again. Your soulmate wasn't expecting approval to arrive in such an unexpected form. They had prepared themselves to defend their feelings. Instead, they found themselves listening to wisdom they would remember for years. Their mother continued. "Real connections are never built only on excitement. Excitement changes with circumstances. Character remains when circumstances change." Those words settled deeply into your soulmate's heart. For the first time, they understood why rushing had never felt right. Every delay, every unanswered question, every unexpected twist had quietly been shaping them into someone stronger, wiser, and more prepared for whatever the future held. But then something happened that surprised even their mother. Your soulmate reached into their pocket and unfolded a small piece of paper they had been carrying for weeks. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a photograph. It was simply a list of qualities they admired most about you, not achievements, not appearances, but kindness, resilience, honesty, patience, the ability to remain hopeful when life became uncertain. Their mother read every line carefully. When she finished, she gently folded the paper and handed it back. "I understand now," she whispered. "You didn't fall for an image. You connected with a spirit that challenged you to become better." Those words lifted a weight your soulmate didn't even realize they had been carrying. Sometimes the greatest reassurance doesn't come from someone telling you what will happen next. It comes from someone helping you understand why your heart has been changing all along. Yet before the conversation ended, their mother shared one final thought that stayed with your soulmate long after they left the room. "Whatever path unfolds," she said, "never build your future on fear. Build it on truth. Truth has a way of revealing the right direction at the right time." Those simple words became the quiet foundation of everything that followed. As your soulmate walked away, they realized something remarkable. The conversation had begun with uncertainty. It continued with understanding. And it ended with hope. But neither of them knew that another unexpected conversation was already waiting just around the corner. A conversation that would make your name appear again in a way no one could have predicted. Sometimes the first door doesn't reveal the destination. It simply prepares you to recognize the next one when it opens. And that next door would change the entire direction of this story. Another day passed, but the conversation refused to fade. Instead, it quietly echoed through the house, returning in unexpected moments. Your soulmate noticed that every ordinary routine now carried an extraordinary thought. Their mother's words had not created pressure, they had created perspective. And perspective has a remarkable way of changing everything without making a sound. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. While preparing dinner together, their mother looked over with a thoughtful expression and asked a question that caught your soulmate completely off guard. "If this person were standing here today, what would you thank them for first?" The question wasn't about romance. It wasn't about promises. It was about gratitude. Your soulmate stood still for a moment, searching for the right answer. Finally, they smiled. "I would thank them," they said quietly, "for helping me believe that becoming a better person is still worth the effort." Their mother didn't respond immediately. Instead, she simply nodded with quiet satisfaction. "Then never lose that feeling," she replied. "Because the greatest connections don't just make life brighter, they inspire you to become brighter yourself." Those words settled deeply into the room. For the first time, your soulmate realized this journey had never been only about finding someone. It had also been about finding a stronger version of themselves. Every challenge they had faced, every moment of waiting, every unanswered question had slowly shaped qualities they might never have discovered otherwise. And then, their mother shared one final observation. "I've noticed something," she said gently. "Whenever you speak about this person, your fears become smaller, and your hopes become larger." Your soulmate had never noticed that before. But now that someone had spoken it aloud, it felt undeniably true. Sometimes we understand our own hearts only after someone else reflects them back to us. That quiet realization became one of the most valuable gifts from the entire conversation. If you've enjoyed following this unfolding story, you're always welcome to share your own thoughts below. Sometimes another person's perspective adds a new layer of meaning. And if these journeys of growth, mystery, and hope resonate with you, subscribing simply means you'll be here when the next story begins. As the evening came to an end, the house returned to its usual calm. But something invisible had changed. The uncertainty that once surrounded your soulmate had transformed into quiet confidence. They no longer felt the need to force answers or rush the future. They understood that meaningful paths reveal themselves step by step, not all at once. Before leaving the room, their mother offered one last sentence. Remember this. The future has a way of surprising those who continue walking with honesty, patience, and courage. Your soulmate carried those words with them. Not as a prediction. Not as a guarantee. But as a reminder that hope grows strongest when it is rooted in truth. And somewhere beyond that evening, another chapter was already beginning, one that neither of them could see yet, but both of them were finally ready to face. A few mornings later, something subtle began to unfold. There were no dramatic announcements. No sudden twists. Just a quiet change that could only be noticed by someone paying close attention. Your soulmate's mother watched her child moving through the day with a calm confidence she hadn't seen before. The restlessness was gone. The endless second-guessing had faded. And in its place was something far more powerful, clarity. She smiled to herself. So, she thought, this is what happens when someone's heart finally stops running from what it truly feels. Later that evening, she invited your soulmate to sit beside her. There was no serious expression this time. Only warmth. Only understanding. She gently said, "I've been thinking about our conversation ever since that day." Your soulmate looked surprised. "I realized something," she continued. "I wasn't shocked because you spoke about someone special. I was shocked because I saw a version of you I've been praying to see for years." Those words landed softly. Yet they carried enormous weight. She explained that for a long time she had watched her child hesitate before every important decision, always questioning, always doubting, always wondering if they were enough. But whenever your name entered the conversation, the doubt disappeared. The hesitation became confidence. The uncertainty became purpose. "That," she whispered, "is what caught my attention." Your soulmate lowered their eyes, overwhelmed by a feeling they couldn't describe. Sometimes we spend years searching for signs from the outside, only to discover that the clearest sign has been growing quietly within us all along. Their mother continued with a gentle smile. "Never chase what forces you to become someone you're not. Walk toward what encourages you to become the person you were always capable of being." The room became peaceful again. No one needed to speak for several moments. Because some truths become stronger in silence than they ever could through endless conversation. As your soulmate prepared to leave, their mother called them back one last time. "There is one thing I hope you always remember." Your soulmate turned around. She looked directly into their eyes. If this connection is built on honesty, respect, patience, and mutual growth, don't let fear write the ending before life has finished writing the story. Those words stayed with your soulmate long after they walked away. That night, they didn't think about uncertainty. They didn't think about obstacles. They thought about possibility. Not because someone promised the future, but because they finally understood that meaningful journeys are built one faithful step at a time. And far away, without either of them realizing it, another unexpected conversation was quietly beginning. A conversation where your name would appear once again, this time in front of someone who had never heard your story before. The ripple from that first conversation hadn't ended. It was only reaching new hearts. And what was about to be said next would make everyone realize that some stories don't move forward by coincidence. They move forward because each honest conversation quietly